What's going on, squad? Chris with NoLimitSquad, your personal isochain and fitness vlogging channel. Today we're going to go over, is the isochain angle specific, because it's a little multifaceted, so let's get into this. So before we dove into the wonderful world of holding things in one position for X amount of excruciating time, I thought that we only get stronger at that angle. So for example, if we're doing a bicep curl here in this position, we only get strong at this position. We don't get strong here or here. And the short answer to that actually is yes, we do get immensely stronger at that angle that we're training, angle specificity. What started to happen though is that people started to ask questions, mainly how much of that strength gain is angle specific? Is it all 100% and zero in other areas? Or do we have a little bit of carryover, irradiation? And if there is irradiation, how far does it go? 20 degrees, 30 degrees? You know, this is all covered in Paul Wade's isometric manual, link down below. So I was doing my research about 3-4 years ago. This is when I started to run into channels like the Pioneer. You know, as I was researching it, I don't believe that he said it, but in like little articles on the internet, the number 20 started to come up pretty consistently, and that was 20 degrees from that train angle is about as far as the strength transfer goes. So it's here and 20 degrees this way and 20 degrees this way. That's it. What I started to find out though, and I'm sure a lot of the squad members that have the book have also realized when they read it, is scientists that were doing these studies, they didn't come to that same conclusion. So of course we're gonna ask why, you know, being information seekers that we are, you know, trying to level up on all aspects, not just physically, right? And it came to the conclusion that yes, there is angle specificity here. There is. You get the greatest amount of strength at the train angle. That is absolute. That still occurs. That is still very much the thing. But there are still some transfer to those other angles. Knowing this was a huge part of me programming not only myself but my clients on the isochain, when I realized that we could still keep that median position at 90 degree and still get strength spillover into the other areas via irradiation. I'm gonna go into that in a second. The only thing is that the spillover into those other angles that are not 90 degree just take a L because of the law of diminishing returns. The gains at those untrained angles just aren't that great. So I'm gonna show you guys a graph in just a second. The further we are from the training angle, the lower the strength transfer. And actually that makes a lot of sense, cover why that makes sense. But I wanted to go over this study real quick. This is taken straight from Paul Wade's isometric manual. So in a 12-month study, the quadriceps were trained only at a 60 degree angle. After a year, strength also increased hugely at 90 and 30 degrees untrained angle. The greatest strength gain was at the 60 degree training angle. So essentially, angle specificity, pretty much what I just said the last minute or so. Also, if you heard that car, I apologize. I'm outside and there's a highway right near here. So pretty much what does that study mean? Everyone that said it only trains that angle and it's pretty much useless because it only trains that angle, they only have half the story. Because their argument is that it doesn't build complete strength because it only builds strength at that angle. But if you think about it, like, it doesn't really make sense. How are you just terrible at your bicep curl and you're just like superhuman for a second and then terrible? Like, no, there has to be some degree of strength transfer in those other angles because that's just not how the body works. I mean, if you're strong at this, if you just became super strong at this angle, there has to be some strength. Like, it just doesn't make any sense, right? Even without reading the book sheds a little bit more light on it. Angular specificity doesn't mean that we only grow stronger at that one point. It means that if we only train in that one position, our strength gains are greatest at that one position. That doesn't mean we don't get any other strength gain in the other position. As with all strength measurements, there is a specific force or torque versus joint angle curve for each type of muscle contraction. So that is highly unlikely that a strength increase would be confined to a very precise angle and nowhere else in the range. You heard it there first, guys. Some researchers even doubted that angular specificity was a thing at all, at first, until it got proven that it is. But the reason they doubted it though is because different potentials of strength for those muscles at those different angles were all almost entirely due to the length tension relationship. Now this is where I was reading in the book and like I was pretty much like drooling because I just love this information, and it's still information that I'm learning because, you know, you read a book once and you kind of retain some information, but when you read it multiple times, a lot of the stuff just starts to stick more. But this one, I had no idea about this. So with myology, skeletal muscle possesses its highest strength at a specific point. Usually it's resting length, but it's not always the middle. It's not always here. Sometimes that's not the most powerful angle to train at. And I do have a video on which angle should we train on the Isochain. Here's a link right here, a little bit of a different video than this. You should definitely check that out. But it is important to know that muscle strength decreases proportionally when stretched beyond or shortened beyond that point. Another reason why scientists were calling BS on this essentially came down to form, because a lot of the people that were in those studies were using leverage to perform at higher peak levels, when if they had the correct form, the number would be lower. So there just wasn't enough data at that point to come to a solid conclusion. That's why they were doubting angle specificity. So in English, what is this? What does that little excerpt from Paul Wade's isometric manual mean? Essentially, it means that if we train at a specific angle, here you can see that I'm training the deadlift from the bottommost position on the Isochain. This is without any aids, right? By training my deadlift on a bottommost position, I'm getting the most gains at that angle. Referencing the chart from earlier, here's where I am here. Now, that might not be the optimal position. In fact, for the deadlift, I find that my highest numbers are near the top of the position. So, for example, with the bicep curl, I don't know if anyone has performed the bicep curl at all three angles on the Isochain yet. Whether you have the OG with a dynamometer or the Dragendorfer, it doesn't matter. I've noticed that ripping into with everything I have, my highest numbers are actually at the bottom and the top, with my mid position numbers being the lowest. For the deadlift, I find that my lowest numbers are at the bottom and my highest numbers are at the top. And this is after trying it over the course of months. Has anyone else found any differences? Have you performed those same exercises and it's like, whoa, wait a minute, Chris. No, comment down below. But it does vary per exercise. Normally, it's right in that sweet spot, the 90 degree, but it's not always the case. But what are your thoughts? I'd love to know what the squad thinks about angle specificity. It is definitely a thing. We do get strongest at that angle that we train at, but there is some spillover. It's not just useless at this angle. Your arm doesn't just become useless here because we're training at this angle. That actually doesn't make any sense, and it's now proven. All right, guys, let me know what your thoughts are. I'd love to know down below. It's a community. Let's talk about it. We'll see you in the next video.